This episode is definitely not about lying. Beauty is truth, truth beauty, so said John Keats, but is truth really needed for something to be beautiful? Or to put the question in more philosophical language, do works of art need to contain some truth in order to have aesthetic value? This question belongs to the branch of philosophy called aesthetics, and certainly many people have thought that the answer was yes. If you've ever studied any maths or physics, then you might have encountered what Bertrand Russell called the sublimely pure beauty of an elegant, well-structured formula. But if we just leave it at that and say, yes, truth is beauty, without truth, art is nothing, then we're gonna run into some problems. Obviously, if we take truth is beauty in the most literal sense, then that's gonna rule out all fiction, even all historical allegory. No more Shakespeare, no more Milton, no more Harry Potter. So let's take a step back from the literal perspective and consider something called propositional theory. Now, proposition is a technical philosophical term that more or less means any sentence with a meaning. So, the cat sat on the mat is a proposition, but bloogie 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 blue isn't. Propositional theory, in a nutshell, says that a work of art contains two kinds of propositions: subject level and thematic level. Subject levels are just descriptions of things that occur, like Ralph sat on a fallen trunk, his left side to the sun. In literature, these subject level propositions are what's written on the page. But thematic level propositions are the subtext, the moral message, the between the lines stuff. In Lord of the Flies, an example might be humans are inherently savage. The theory says that a work of art has value if these thematic level propositions are true. So, is mercy a good thing? Check. Is ambition potentially dangerous? Check. Is friendship magic? Double check. So we can say that truth is beauty and we can keep all our fiction. Maybe. The problem is that this is still going to rule a lot of stuff out as not beautiful. Take Lord of the Rings, for example. What are its thematic level propositions exactly? Orcs are bad? Okay, maybe something like courage is a virtue, but that kind of stretches the text a little bit, and courage isn't always a virtue in every situation anyway, so that's not going to count in favour of its aesthetic value. Or going beyond literature, what about something like this? Or this? Or this? Any thematic level propositions there? What about this? Or this? Or going into totally different territory, what about video games like Limbo or Journey, commonly held to be beautiful, but what are the thematic level propositions exactly? Also, it seems like if a work's thematic level propositions weren't true, then that needn't necessarily detract from its value. Like, imagine Lucretius had been totally wrong about atoms. Would that make his poetry any less moving? So, propositional theory has some issues, but at the same time, we don't want to abandon the idea that truth and beauty have some kind of connection. Like the other day, I was watching Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and there's this one bit towards the end where a chimpanzee stands upright on top of a car. I remember that shot being really jarring, because knowing what I do about chimp hips and spines and weight bearing, I knew that there's no way a chimp could ever stand like that, no matter how super intelligent it got. I.e., the fact that it couldn't be true spoiled the aesthetic experience for me. But up until that point, I'd been quite happily watching a film about super intelligent chimpanzees. Which just goes to show that the relationship between truth and beauty is kind of weird. I could honestly go on and on about this, but I want to turn it over to you guys. What do you guys think about the relationship between truth and beauty? Leave a comment with your questions and suggestions, and we'll answer them at the end of the next video. Favourite, share, tell your friends about PhilosophyTube, and if it is true that you leave a like, then you are beautiful. You commented, therefore you exist. We want to take a look at some of your comments from our last video on I Think, Therefore I Am. First off, let me say a huge thank you to all of the people who subscribed off the back of our last video. I honestly never even expected anyone to watch it, so thank you so much, and I'm really happy you liked it, and I hope that we can slake your philosophical lust. Dark Renegade said, I think therefore I am is kind of a tautology, because if it's I think therefore I am, then yeah, duh, because you already said I in the premise. Yeah, that's a really good point. Matthew Jones asked, were you influenced by PBS Idea Channel? Yes, they were one of my major inspirations in making this project, as you can probably tell. I wanted to get some hardcore philosophy done, but in that kind of entertaining, light-hearted format. So if you guys haven't already subscribed to them, then you totally should. Some of you also commented on the reply we did to their video on artificial intelligence, in which we outlined John Searle's Chinese room theory. If you haven't seen those, then the original is here, and my reply is here, and I will put links in the description. The Scourge 007 and quite a few other people said that the Chinese room thought experiment is just as applicable to people as it is to computers, because there's no way you can tell if people really understand the symbols they shuffle around inside their heads. And yeah, the problem of other minds is definitely a huge issue in philosophy. Maybe you could say that it's easier to give the benefit of a doubt to a person than it is to the computer, because we already know that the brains and bodies arrangement works to produce consciousness, in our own case at least. Bujo asked, what if the AI was able to modify the rulebook it was working from and then connect to something like the internet? Would it be able to learn Chinese then? Yeah, learning AI is really interesting. I'm not quite sure how John Searle would answer that one. But remember that the ones and zeros of the internet would have to be in Chinese as well, so the point is that the guy in the room wouldn't be able to learn it if the only thing going back and forth was Chinese. Chinese characters, not Chinese letters. Thank you, the Jumping Zebra, and Duibuchi. To Oscar Twomey, Joshua Edward Pearson, Charlie Spargo and Shakila Hamed, thank you guys so much for your really kind feedback. That really made my day.